Have you ever sat down and wondered, what do the greatest songwriters of all time have to say about songwriting? Well, worry no further, because in this video I will be covering what 10 of these exceptional songwriters have to say about their craft. I will be covering their individual thought processes and philosophy on the subject, and is there a consensus on the best way to do it? And later on I will be covering their top tips and methods on how to become a great songwriter just like them. Now before we begin, just one quote from the great Bob Dylan, who says, in reference to songwriting, "Any idiot can do it. Everyone writes a song, just like everybody's got that one great novel in them." What does Bob really mean by this? Bob Dylan can be quite vague and often mysterious with his words, which is probably one of the reasons why he's Rolling Stone's #1 songwriter who's ever lived. But before we get to his cryptic advice on songwriting, why don't we start on a lighter note with Sir Paul McCartney. When asked about his songwriting abilities, Sir Paul says, "You never get it down. I don't know how to do this. You'd think I do. But it's not one of these things you ever really know how to do. Every new song feels like square one again. I never feel like an expert." Now I know what you're probably thinking. That's not a lighter note. Why would I even try to do something that I always feel like a beginner at? Because that's why he loves it. And I can assure you that most of the greats will have similar things to say. In an interview, David Bowie was asked about the beginner's mind, and he said, "It is essential that I get surprised and excited by what I'm doing, even if it's just for me." In other words, being a forever beginner is a good thing. This is how the excitement for the craft sticks around. If you ever got to a point where you felt like an expert, the process would become boring and routine. The excitement would just disappear. The beginning again and the newness of it is why Paul loves it. Even after all these years, 66 years of songwriting to be exact, Paul McCartney is still in love with making music. And there's a spark of wonder and enthusiasm in the way that he approaches songwriting, even today. If you can buy into that idea of having so much passion for something, even when it's hard, every single time, you might just be one of the next greats. Where do these songs come from? Do you need to write about what you know? Joni Mitchell in an interview says, "It's okay to write about what you don't know. Everybody knows something about almost everything, and you're completely fine to share that bit with anyone else." Phew, well that's a relief. I think I can probably speak for a lot of people when I say I know a little bit about a lot. She states as an example her song Woodstock, about the Woodstock Festival in 1969. And you know what? She was not even there. She just heard stories from friends and things that she saw on the news. And you know what? Everyone loved it. And the people who even went to Woodstock said that they loved it and that she nailed that song. It captured the vibe. Her process starts by making an account of what you do know, and then filling the rest in with your own honest passion, viewpoint, and opinion. She says you know enough to have an emotional reaction, and that's what matters. I find this information very comforting as a songwriter because often I feel like my life isn't that exciting, so what do I have to write about? This bit of information from a renowned songwriter gives me a bit of peace, that now I feel like I can write a song about anything I'd like, because I can use the information that I have and the emotions that I carry, and someone will ultimately connect with it. Now, where else do songs come from if they're not just from stories that you hear or things you see on the news? For this, we must reconvene with our friend Bob Dylan. He feels as though great songwriting is rooted in the subconscious. The quote that I read of his earlier, "Any idiot can do it. Everyone writes a song just like everybody has that one great novel in them." What I feel like he means is that everybody can do it, write a song that is, but not everybody can be great. He says it isn't a case of desire to write a song, so much as it is a need to write that makes one a great songwriter. He has a caveat: unless someone comes along with a pure heart and really has something to say, that's a different story. So to Bob, it appears that either you feel the need to write, otherwise being considered an average songwriter, or you have a pure heart. Those definitely sound like realistic expectations, huh? But really, I would not expect anything less from Bob. In a similar vein, Paul Simon, one of my personal favorites, gives the last big chunk of reflections for this section. He says, I'm not interested in writing something that I thought about. I'm interested in discovering where my mind wants to go, or what object it wants to pick up. It always picks up on something true. You'll find out a lot more about what you're thinking that way than if you're determined to say something. What you're determined to say is filled with all your rationalizations and your defenses. This is the kicker. What do you want to say opposed to what you're thinking? He says, my job is to find out what I am thinking, even if it's something I do not want to be thinking. He personally considers this idea as a form of writer's block, as having a thought that you would really prefer not to have, so you don't want to say it, i.e., you're blocked. To Paul, where great songs come from is a matter of saying what you should say, rather than saying what is easy. The song should challenge what you are capable of, saying things that may be difficult to express. Many people could write what we all see every day on the surface, but only the greats can connect with what's on the lower, deeper levels and write them in a way that touches our souls. I read what each of these three has to say, and it speaks of a journey one has to take if they wish to make it to the promised land of the great songwriters. It does not sound like an easy road. It sounds like a road where deep reflection about the world around you and self-reflection is necessary, where you are forced to say the things that no one else is able to, and in a way that doesn't just touch one heart, but a way that touches many hearts. In just a moment, we will review the songwriting tips and methods that I have uncovered, but first I'd like to mention a few statements from a couple other songwriting greats. And if you're liking the video so far, I would really appreciate hitting that like and subscribe button, and let's keep going. Stevie Nicks says her goal with writing is to make a little world for you to come with me into for a little while. David Bowie says, wherever I'm writing, that place tends to make itself very known. Both of these revolve around the idea of the listener experience as being a place. They both want to create a space or a world for the listener to be in, a way of transporting them outside of where they physically are. Maybe it's a totally new place, make-believe, or maybe it's a reflection of the place where the song was written. But I'd personally like to think that it's a combination of all of these things. It's a suggestion to look at a song or an album as an experience, as a world that the listener will be visiting for a little bit of time. What kind of a place would you like your listeners to live in for a small amount of time? That, I believe, is a very important question to be asking yourself while you are writing. Okay, it's time. The songwriting tips and methods that the great songwriters have graced us with. Why don't we start with Bob Dylan, because he's the most vague, doesn't get that specific. We'll get to more specifics as we move forward. He provides a little bit of advice on how to access the subconscious mind. He says, get rid of the bad thoughts. Place yourself in an environment where you can completely accept all the subconscious stuff that comes to you from the inner workings of your mind, and comfortably spew forth the inner voice that lies hidden. Not the most specific, I know, but still from Bob. He's the greatest, number one, and, just think about it. But because I know people like specifics, we're going to move forward with Stevie Nicks, who does have a little bit more detail for us when it comes to her process and how she writes. She says, I keep a journal. I write everything down. Writing a song starts with a little bit of inspiration. Something will happen. It can be anything that catches your attention. I write a line, and there it is. I'm off. The beginning of what I call a poem. When I sit down to officially write, I light some candles and I light some incense. And I put on some music for whatever mood that I am in, or whatever mood I hope to be in. And it's time, my special time alone. If I finish the poem and I think it's good, I'll sit down at the piano and make a song. Stevie also states that she writes every single day. Every evening, she sits down with her journal and she summarizes all the notable parts of her day. When I was reading about what she said with her process, the thing that really caught my eye was this. She says, some things that you hope you never forget are forgotten if you do not write them down. I personally keep a journal, and I try my best to write every single day. I highly recommend it, especially if you're trying to write songs. It will be your best friend. Don't ever let your extraordinary stories be forgotten. Okay, moving along. We are back to the favorite of mine, Mr. Paul Simon. He says for him, the music always precedes the words. The words often come from the sound of the music, and eventually evolve into coherent thoughts or incoherent thoughts. Like Paul Simon, Paul McCartney will either sit down at the piano or with the guitar and just look for melodies, chord shapes, musical phrases, some words, a thought, just to get started. So where Stevie Nicks seemed to start with the words, these two fellows seem like they start with the music. Different minds, different methods, same greatness. Now back to Paul Simon. Rhythm plays a very crucial role in lyric making as well. It's like a puzzle to find the right words to express what the music is saying. Paul McCartney says something very similar. He says that he'll sit with a song and work it out as if it's an essay or a crossword puzzle. He continues to say, sometimes it leads me down a blind alley. So then I retrace my steps and I start down another road. Paul Simon also says, like Bob Dylan, you want your mind to wander, to pick up words and phrases, and fool around with them and drop them. To me, it sounds as if songwriting is a game to them. It's fun trying to figure out this riddle that only you know the answer to. You just don't know it yet. To me, that's a very alluring concept, and to whoever's watching this, I'm sure it is as well. In an interview, David Bowie was even more specific than the rest when it came to his methods on how he writes songs. He said he often uses the William Burroughs method, which is a method of cutting up text in random patterns. This can be used with one sentence, jumbling individual words, or it can be used with whole sentences and switching up sentence placement in a paragraph. This can create new meaning and mood. He would do this by hand until the internet progressed enough that there were sites that could simulate this same process. He said, I'll use these cut-up websites in order to provoke a new set of images, or a new way of looking at a subject. I find it incredibly useful as a writer's tool. Kurt Cobain has also been mentioned as using this same method, another highly regarded songwriter of a more recent generation. And so you can progress with your own songwriting abilities. I have attached 3 links to the description below for some cut-up websites that you can use today. Okay, the last thing to mention, just to show how different everybody's process can be, I compared Jay-Z, the Hova, with Eminem, Slim Shady. Eminem is said to always be writing in his notebook, similar to Stevie Nicks. He says that 99% of what I write is never used. I just do it to stay engaged with the process of writing and finding new ways to write. So it just comes when I need it. It just comes. Jay-Z, on the other hand, doesn't write a single thing down. He is said to just listen to the beat and hums. And then he goes to the mic. 20 minutes later, he has a whole complicated verse. So there you have it, as just an example of comparison. 2 of the greatest rappers that have ever done it, totally different styles. So on that note, as we wrap up, it is very important to remember that while these are the greats, and it is smart to listen to what they have to say, music is a creative space. Anything is possible, and if you learn one thing from this video today, it is that there are many ways to be a great songwriter, and many ways that still have yet to be uncovered. So pay attention to these common themes that I have sprinkled into your mind, but adventure into the abyss of song creation with an open mind and a thirst for new methods. And definitely don't let Bob Dylan scare you away with his obscure counsel. Okay. Thank you everybody so much for watching. That is my video. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I missed, anything you'd like me to talk about. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you on my page where I have music and other videos just like this. So